So, within that framework of advocacy, as advocates, safety plan with survivors who use substances, what are some things that would be helpful for advocates to be able to think about and ask about as they are integrating that awareness of substance use and safety around substance use into the overall safety plan?
Yeah, certainly. We in our shelter utilize sort of a couple variations of safety plans surrounding use. We have one, like, it's called the relapse prevention safety plan. So it's when someone has told us that they're in recovery, we never assume, and they've told us that they would like resources around relapse prevention. So we go through coping skills and triggers, and what are you going to do if you're offered a substance? What do you do if you accept the substance and then you want to get rid of it? Like, what do you do if you relapse? Like, what does that look like? So we sort of go through the safety plan at whatever level they are with their permission. So we also talk about the importance of being able to have open conversations about what substance they're using, at what frequency, what time of day, where are they accessing it. And none of these questions are asked to be nosy. Just like when you're talking about domestic violence, you're not asking the abuser's work schedule because you're nosy, right? You're asking because that's information you need to keep the victim safe. So the same way here. And then if we've had survivors, like, these are the sorts of open conversations you can get to when you create an environment in which people feel comfortable. So we've had survivors outright tell us, I need more of substance A and I don't know where I'm going to get it today. So, like, just focusing on safe methods of obtaining what they need, whether it be a needle or the substance or a Narcan equivalent, like whatever they might need, overdose prevention equivalent, whatever it might take. Being able to facilitate open and honest conversations about it, I think, is really important. And then knowing what and where and when could help prevent any injury related to substance use.
Yes. And is there anything that advocates felt like they kind of needed to know before being able to have this kind of conversation?
I think they didn't even know what they needed to know, when we don't know what we don't know, sort of. And what has been helpful with us is to talk about what causes someone to begin using substances, whether that's the, abuser's control, or, their own coping mechanism for things that have happened to them, or, they were introduced by their friends, or, whatever, why, and then what use actually looks like. Because I think we're given this idea of what someone who uses substances is actually like. They give up everything for it. It's impossible to function, like, you're completely unable to parent. And that's like what we're hearing through social media and through society. And so actually seeing how substances affect human being behavior, interaction with others, when you sit and listen to someone who is using a substance and they tell you, I use it because, we had a perfect example. We had a client in the shelter who was using and expressed that she used solely and primarily because she could not get restful sleep without it. And so hearing, like, I think having more conversations around that is very helpful for advocates. So I think what helped them was a base knowledge of the real truth around surrounding substance use and its relationship to trauma and its relationship to domestic violence and its relationship to parenting was very helpful in sort of like taking away some of the fear factor surrounding these conversations. And then, of course, seeing it modeled. It's helpful when you're training on your second day of work and you're watching this advocate of 10 years have an open and honest conversation surrounding use. Like, it's helpful to see it work across all lines of the advocacy spectrum. So I would say anything, it's they don't know what they don't know, and making sure that they have all of the information the same way you provide it surrounding contextual domestic violence and human trafficking, you would provide around substance use the same way.
Yeah. So, really, again, destigmatizing, busting up the myths, helping to share that unbiased knowledge around, really the spectrum of substance use and its relationship to trauma and to abuse and violence. And then with that knowledge, also the kind of like the felt knowledge, the experiential knowledge of seeing it modeled, seeing what happens when we're able to have those open conversations. And that goes such a long way in helping to really neutralize that fear that people bring in as well.
Yeah, and it creates an environment specifically within the shelter where it's not something that the survivor feels they have to hide. They're more likely to come back. They're more likely to seek more services, to engage in case management more often, because when they're having a conversation with their case manager about, seeking employment, they don't have to be afraid to tell the case manager, I probably shouldn't seek employment somewhere that might require me to take a urine test. Or those are conversations we can openly have we can just go ahead and reduce barriers that way by knowing these things up front and being able to work where the survivor is rather than trying to shove them into where we want them to be. So if anything, we've seen more uptake in use of services, people staying longer, feeling much more comfortable. Like we had on a survivor's relapse plan, their plan was to come discuss with staff, because when we said, do you have someone that you would feel comfortable sort of talking with if you feel triggered or like you want to use, and she said, I don't really have anyone. Well, now you do. So like being able to fill in even just those sort of support gaps, I think become very beneficial and help advocates again see past the stigma and see the human being that is so much more than the substance use that they're accused of. That's all they are. Like seeing them as a whole human.
Yes. And it makes me think about how, we see in the research time and time again around substance use that when people have trusted people that they can go to and they can talk with and they can have real conversations with and not just be judged or, rejected, right? That is such an important part of stability, of safety, of improving one's health. And so absolutely, just being able to really connect with folks on that human level and offer that support and really use non-judgmental approaches. And we see, right, that people will use the services when they feel like they can actually trust other people.
Yeah, and when they feel like they can be honest about why they didn't go to the job interview or why that apartment won't work because it's located very close to my old dealer, or like when these things that are barriers are actually able to be talked about in an open environment, it's so much easier to do all of the other things with this individual that they might need. Housing is easier, job search is easier, helping them parent and dive into that world is easier. And you can also help normalize, because a lot of the needs are similar. A survivor who uses substances will need childcare just as often as someone who doesn't. Helping to normalize, like, I'm a terrible mother because I sent my child to daycare. Well, we all do that, right? So like helping to normalize, I think, because they're also internalizing all of that stigma. So I think it's helpful to just the open and honest conversations have helped better than anything else we've tried.
Yes. And that internalized stigma and internalized shame is so constant, especially when we've talked about people who have been, experiencing emotional abuse and financial abuse, all the different forms that abuse takes, right? And then the societal stigma, especially for women, for people who are LGBTQ, for people who are parenting, right? All of the added layers of stigma related to substance use. And we know that shame drives use that is not aligned with someone's own goals for themselves, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so our programs not only not adding to that shame, but actually helping to process and neutralize some of that shame.
Yeah, and particularly Appalachian culture. I mean, it's its own area of the world, and there is certainly a huge stigma in West Virginia specifically surrounding opioid use specifically, and just the idea that like on any given day on Facebook, social media, someone will post, which why on earth is this? I don't know, but someone overdosed near the Sheets down the street, the gas station, and people comment and say, just let him go. And it's like, that's what your survivors are seeing. They saw that. So just not contributing to that and helping, like, as you said, to sort of unpack it and really like value their life, I think is also just in and of itself advocacy, but then also like life-saving advocacy.
Yes. To value and celebrate people is such a powerful tool in anti-violence.
And
So,
often a missed tool.
yes.